A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Brothers and sisters, welcome back to Youth Forum. And we were discussing before we broke up for break. What we were discussing was about how the youth and how our parents and the generation before and the current generation have almost responsibilities for what we should do in order to bring the next generation or the current generation who are astray from Islam back to Islam. And what we ended on was a point that Brother Zayghan mentioned, is that we should look at role models, and specifically Imam Ali alayhi wassalam. So Brother Zayghan, have you got anything more to add to that?
There's so much we can say about culture and how we can help and how we can move forward. But there's a lot of issues. I know many people would face issues that they're being forced to follow the religion, and they're still following the religion, but they don't understand why. Exactly. And it goes back to, we have to learn. And there's so many cultural issues that people are fighting for no reason, like gossiping. And the most, I can't believe, I don't know how to put it, most atrocious or most disgusting is like how people are going specifically to one center or one organization or one mosque, splitting themselves. Yeah. Or if there's an interracial marriage, let's say between an Arab or a South Asian or Indian or a Pakistani or an Iraqi or an Irani, or a black person, especially with black Muslims. Alhamdulillah, Zaria was oppressed for the past 6 years, and even though Alhamdulillah all of us have come to the light of the tragedies and what's happening to Sheikh Zakzaki, may Allah protect his soul and his people. Why has it took us 6 years to find out about our African brothers in Zaria? Why is it taking so long? And it's the same here. When a black revert comes, we tend to push them away. When they ask for marriages for our daughters or our sisters, we push them away. Well, they are no different.
Yeah, I think it's like a youth and all the kind of thing, because yesterday me and Zayghan, we went to a gathering at one of our friends' houses, and there was, mashallah, there was a mixture. There was Arabs, there was Iranians, there was Pakistanis, there was everything, like Afghans as well. And it's because the youth organized it and the youth came there, and it's like,
how many faces we didn't see?
There's a lot of people that I used to talk to, but I never met them. I saw them there, and we had a long discussion.
Yeah, it was good to see.
Dentistry and that kind of thing.
Just to remind you that you can also call in and contribute your poems or any of the points that you'd like, any of your personal maybe opinions or your personal life stories about how we should bring ourselves back into the right path. You can call in. The number is on the screen. And also quick notification almost. This Saturday, there is an ABSOC event in Nawab, so if you'd like to, attend, please do attend. We are going to be there as well, inshallah. So please do attend. More tickets, ticket information and everything will be available soon, inshallah. So, Brother Zayghan, I think you have a small poem to contribute.
Inshallah, yes. I do have a poem now. It's about Lady Zainab, and I'll just do a poem from the yesterday event. The Milad yesterday me and Brother Jafar went to was for the birthday of Lady Zainab. And without further ado, I will read this poem. So we recite aloud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I start in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Again I wake up to the same sun rising, and my day no different, and I continue my endless path where my search seems non-existent. Oh heart, how lost and cowardly you are, for you were born greater, for weren't you gifted a love for such a queen from your creator. It's difficult to recite a poem about Lady Zainab when all her life she faced tragedies after tragedies, but we will try to be happy for this great being, for this great status, for this great legacy. Every day I see the cloth of modesty upon heads. If you ask how Lady Zainab is alive, this is how she is alive. Every day I see walking the cloth of modesty upon heads, which is our sign of victory over those tyrannical men whose minds are so darkened with fear they don't understand. We are constantly victorious. We don't need to fight for victory again, for defeat never enters the kingdom of this being who even with chained hands, her palms rose a revolution. With dry lips, her words crushed every one of their mountains. And as a captive, freed humanity from every false illusion, for which eyes that could not see heaven and hell on that historically engraved day, on the day of Ashura, one side was the path to hell, and other side was the path to heaven. For which eyes could not see heaven and hell on that historically engraved day. For I still see those eyes who are still blind, who act as another from claiming to be the lovers of the masters, they say. For Ashura was split like Musa dividing the sea, so we can cross this bridge to the sanctity of Allah, to not be engulfed by this world in between and be amongst the followers of Abidillah. Oh, how we wished we were there for Abidillah. Oh, how we wished we were there. Each moment of despair from this wish, so that this queen could have seen how we gave our lives for her brother. And when her heart filled with arrows was crushed on the floor like a flower, like a red flower. And when her heart filled with arrows was crushed on the ground like a red flower, we would have been amongst the prayers when she cried, "Oh Allah, accept this sacrifice." For she is the one who listened to the melodies of that last night from the nightingales of Hussein's soldier, and her love for her brother made those soldiers stand even more, even bolder. She is the night to the moon of Hashim. Abbas protects her with his endless sight, and the flower of Ali as Hidayat is the root to her magnificent might. For she is the cloak of her mother, bestowing upon the world Zahra's modesty, and the remedy of Hassan as she would accompany her brother abandoned and lonely. Oh hearts, how can we celebrate this love with our years? Oh hearts, how can we celebrate this love with our years? How else can we show our happiness but with our tears? 1,000 seeds are planted with her every step. The memories of the martyrs are in her every breath. When Abbas lost his arms, she carried his flag. With despair in Akbar, she strengthened Hussein's back. Against thousands and thousands, she never showed fear. And with broken hearts, she kept the heart of Islam intact. For even now, the flags of Abbas are being carried by the Zainabs of my time, and it's the Zahras who send their sons to the caravan of Karbala. For it's the Ruqayyas that keep their father's happiness alive, and the Fatimas waiting for their beloved ones to come back to their Medina. They said, "Go to Karbala, Hussein is there." They said, "Go to Karbala, Hussein is there." But I see Hussein with Abbas leading the 72 elsewhere. I ask, where do you go, oh my master Hussein? I ask, where do you go, oh my master Hussein? Hussein. He says, I want to go visit my sister Zainab's grave. So know that in the kingdom of Damascus, Abbas protects each pillar, and the army of Hussein stand in line. For the children of Zahra will take bullets and bombs, but none will ever touch Zainab's shrine. But none will ever touch Zainab.
MashaAllah, very beautifully recited there by Brother Zayram. So just a reminder that if you'd like to share your poetry, or if you have any questions specifically on poetry, you can also call in. The number is on the screen. Oh, and just back to the discussion, Ja'far, you know, his poems about Sayyidah Zainab, and she's a big role model that we can use, especially the females in our community as well. So what can you talk about Sayyidah Zainab? You know, she's one of like, she's been compared to Imam Ali as well, especially after the tragedy of Karbala.
Yeah, I think she stands for all females. All females should look at her as a role model, because we were talking about role models before, and I think she's like the highest status of all role models. And definitely the females, like, I don't see much you know, action from females. Maybe there is, but I haven't seen much. And I think they should strive more to do these kind of programs, for example, or call in, do some poetry or something like that. It's these small things that can make us realize the strength of women in the society, because we don't really see that. And what Zainab alayhi salam did was very, very powerful. And I think we should, you know, the women should follow that kind of thing and do their own part, even if it's a small thing, you know, calling in, doing a little, you know, poem or something like that.
Yeah, so of course, the tragedy of Karbala, you know, just because you were talking about that, your poem, we could talk about that as well, because the tragedy of Karbala is very important, especially in Shia Islam, and a lot of people don't know about the tragedy of Karbala, and one way in which we can portray the tragedy is through poetry, just like Brother Zayram did. And we do have a call, yes. And it's now hung up.
Oh,
so
no.
if you'd like to call again,
please.
if you'd like to call back again, we will pick up. So yeah, just bringing it back on the tragedy of Karbala, and it's really important in Shia Islam. So, I mean, people don't really know much about tragedy of Karbala, besides a lot of Shias, and even some Shias don't know about the tragedy.
Yeah.
You know, they don't know about how important it is to the deen as well, and what it did for us, and how we look at the tragedy, and what changes.
Goes back to our responsibility, like we said, we need to go back and learn history, you know.
I mean, besides poetry, what else can we do to portray the tragedy?
Be like Lady Zainab. If it wasn't for Lady Zainab, then the tragedy of Karbala would never be written down in history, because Lady Zainab was one of the sole survivors from the family of the Prophet, with Imam Zayn al-Abidin, and she and Imam Zayn al-Abidin, especially her khutbah in the Majlis of Yazid in his palace, has shook the walls of Syria and Damascus till now, shook the walls of the whole world. And this is why Brother Ja'far was saying a very good point, that, you know, sisters should push forward, and we try to do that. And we see sisters like, I know in the Gala, Sister Abir Safa, she's now pushing forward to become a renowned world spoken word artist for Islam and for women. And I think it's empowering for all women. And they say Islam is now a feministic religion, and then they bring feminism is one side against Islam. But feminism is a delicate topic, and you can't say Islam doesn't give any rights, because if you look at the Prophet's life and how he, you know, helped women to become, not helped, but, you know, treated women as, you know, like just like men. Bibi Khadija, Lady Khadija was one of the richest women at the times of the Arabs, and she married Rasulullah, and it's actually to the nations that she was older than Rasulullah.
Again, so that brings back to the culture and how the culture impacts on the interpretation of Islam. I don't want to go too controversial, but a lot of cultures see women as being very submissive, when in fact Islam's real message is, you know, equality.
Be a leader, yes.
You're right, because a lot of people tend to like downgrade women in some cultures, which isn't right, of course, because like Zaygam said, Islam is, you know, it welcomes females, males, everyone, part of this religion, course not homosexual and that kind of thing, but but you know, I think there needs to be like a balance. Like there always has to be a balance, because if you downgrade women or downgrade men, then you're not doing the right thing.
So what do you think the women in Islam have to contribute? We were talking about
you can do anything.
They want to contribute. You know, women have. It's very difficult. I don't want to offend any of the sisters out there, but you know, if I'm saying the good things, then Alhamdulillah, Allah give us the reward. But if I'm saying something wrong, then please forgive me, because I'm not a female, but I try my best to help my sisters in society. It's true, because you can say the wrong thing, and because we have any sisters here, we don't have that point of view. But sisters, that's why in Islam, men usually go on war, because sisters are the ones that can control their passion and think clearly sometimes. But they actually let their emotions come out at the same time, and they can power that and make sure they can move forward with it. Lady Zainab used her emotion and her logic in the same way, and if men could do that, like Imam Ali used his emotion and logic in the same way. That's why he used to grab the hearts of people as well as the minds. Lady Zainab did the same thing. She grabbed the hearts of the people and the minds. And that's what females should be doing. They are doing that, but they say that some are shy, and that's because culture allows that. And modesty is good. Modesty, it comes in being shy and being conserved, but it also comes in doing the right thing at the same time. Not speaking to non-mahram on a daily basis or something, but when you think you can help anyone for the sake of Islam, then go for it. That doesn't mean you should speak one-on-one to non-mahram, but help the sisters, help each other, and then brothers should help each other, and then the brothers should help their mothers and their wives and their sisters, their mahram, to push forward. Because it's the mothers who are teaching the generations. I remember this one quote, it says, if you want to change the world, then let the mothers change the world, because they're the ones who are going to be the biggest influence. Because in society, the mother tends to look after the child, because they have that natural love to it, because they gave birth and they had the 9 months of pain and suffering and the aches that they went through. But they love their children, that unconditional love, not as much as men. We wish we could have that, and we wish we could be that influential for children. But we feel much closer to our mother naturally than to our father scientifically. So, to push down and to make women inferior is one of the biggest mistakes we do, and that's why Saudi Arabia is going to crumble. I don't want to say specifically, but any state or any societies in Iraq, in Saudi Arabia, in Pakistan, in India, in any place, even in England, people think there's anti-feminism there. It's anti-feminism here, for God's sake. In America, people, I don't want to say specific names who are from specific backgrounds, they treat women inferior. So it's not only Islam. Well, it's not Islam, it's the people who claim to be following Islam.
Yes, so do you think, well, of course, Islam is a perfect religion, and it's just the interpretation of people. They look at Islam and they completely get the different meaning. Like one of the prime examples of that is ISIS, for example. They take the completely wrong meaning. They take quotes out of context from the Holy Quran, and they completely misjudge what they are supposed to do, and they do something extremely violent, and they treat a woman in an inferior way as well.
And they justify that on that kind of thing, quotes from the Quran. Yeah, I mean, on a practical level, you can do anything to push forward. For example, I like making films. I said this last time. I can make films about the tragedy of Karbala, this kind of things, or poetry. Like I can do a video of Zaygam doing poetry, or WAFIQ, that kind of thing. If you're into drawing, you can draw things. If you're into poetry, you can do poetry. There's a lot of things, I can't think of all of them, but
I mean, so one of the benefits is that we are in a neutral society, and we have...
You can do anything in this kind of society, because if you do it in like a different kind of society, some things aren't allowed. Like acting, for example, there is that kind of, what's it called? It's not allowed in...
Yes, it's almost like a taboo subject in most countries. Maybe most South Asian countries where women are treated as being inferior, and subjects like acting, for example, is like women shouldn't be doing this, etc. So it's like one of the benefits of living in a neutral society is that we can treat both of equally. As well as that,
there is a push from this kind of society, like the Western society, against us not to follow our religion, to basically.
I mean, there is a barrier, isn't there, that we have to stick to, and sometimes we do push over that barrier. Having like a mixed society, for example, there are some barriers that we have to follow as well, because Islam does provide those barriers for our benefit, and sometimes it is a good thing to have a neutral culture, but also sometimes we might go over that boundary and we might commit something.
You have to become a role model. You know, to be a role model for anybody in society, you don't have to necessarily speak to them, especially your non-mahram. You shouldn't, you know, speak to a non-mahram unnecessarily, which, you know, is difficult. Maybe I find it difficult, you know, when I'm in class and there's, you know, non-Muslims or Muslim, you know, girls in our case, who we have to talk to about, you know, lessons, or we have casual conversations, and we justify it, saying, oh, she's in my class. But sometimes when you go home and you reflect on, you're like, at the end of the day, if the person I married did the same thing, you know, would that be the thing? Or if my sister did that, or if my mother was doing that, would I like that? And even if it doesn't come to that, you know, you can make small changes and be that pure person for that, for your wife or for your husband and for your children. And you have to set an example for them from the start. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult in our society. It's a good thing because we can make impacts. If I see a sister who's wearing hijab, then maybe it'll make me respect sisters even more. Because, you know, there's times where people are completely cut off sisters, but when they get married to women, they don't have any respect for a woman because they don't understand. Or the other way around, the woman has no consideration for men's feelings. They're like two different compounds. They're in chemistry. If you do chemistry, they're different, you know, elements. And that's the best example I can use. One compound has different properties to the other. Some might have high boiling points and low melting points.
Some might be white, some might be blue.
So it's different. You can't put the same conditions in both. Otherwise, none of them will react. None of them will be successful. That's why you have to put the right conditions for both of them.
So we have to, as you said, we have to set an example, and we shouldn't be like almost put off by the fact that it might be difficult in this society, because the more difficult it is, the bigger the reward it is in the Day of Judgment. And of course, this is a very temporary world, and most people don't realize that. I mean, 70, 80 years that you're going to live here, and then that's going to be like for infinity. So people need to remember that this is only temporary, and even though it may seem difficult, we should try our hardest to fulfill it, because at the end of the day, the more difficult it is, the bigger the reward.
I was just thinking, you know, like, I'm just going to take it very slowly now, so then, you know, whoever's listening to us, the audience and us can understand. Just imagine, like, you're living your life now, and you're thinking, in 20 years time I'm going to do this, in 10 years time I'm going to do this, in 30 years time, when I'm 60 I'll hopefully have this. And then hereafter, there's no such thing as in 60 years. And just realize that for 60 years you're gonna be constantly, there's no time. I can't describe it. You can't. I was just thinking the other day, I was sat there and I was just like, wow, like if I go to heaven, inshallah, but not only heaven, but to the place that Allah wants me to be, with the Ahlul Bayt. Imagine being with the Ahlul Bayt constantly until eternity.
I mean, that's what we should all strive for, and that should be our ambition and our goals. I mean, of course, we do have worldly goals as well. For example, you know, some may want to be a doctor, some may want to be a dentist.
Get a Lamborghini.
Get a Lamborghini, whatever. So obviously, these goals do happen like in 10, 20 years. We should, of course, I'm not saying we should completely cut off from the worldly goals as well, but our main priority, our almost like our top of the list should be to strive and inshallah achieve Jannah and be with Ahlul Bayt. And one way we could do that is to accomplish these things that Brother Zayghan mentioned as well, no matter how difficult they are. And you mentioned as well some of the things.
If you think about it this way, you know approximately how many friends do you have? Like 10 friends, for example. Each friend has another 10 friends. If you help guide those 10 friends, they're going to help guide. And it's just going to keep going.
It's almost like a domino effect, isn't it?
And eventually you're going to help the whole society, and Islam is like a society, like a religion who cares about the society. If you do salah at home, and you know, salah tanfah al-fahsha'i wal-munkar, it prevents you from doing evil. If you're doing salah at home but you're not going outside and the evil outside is not being prevented, what's the point of your salah? So you need to be that kind of person who changes society as well as changing yourself. Because if you change yourself, then you can be able to change society.
It goes back to the point of not being sheep, being shepherds.
Exactly, yeah.
And you have to be leaders in the society. If you have to be the leader in your house, that doesn't mean disrespect your parents, but just means, you know, be kind and being, you know, thoughtful. And if you're the parent, be a leader for your child.
I mean, even if your parents are quite astray from Islam, you don't have to necessarily disrespect them. You can almost guide them as well. You can be like, look, if you look at this and if you look at that, and almost teach your parents, because at the end of the day, you are going to get rewarded in the Day of Judgment.
You shouldn't never disrespect your parents.
Rasulullah, one person came to Rasulullah, he came from a Jewish background, and he said, "Oh Rasulullah, my mother is Jewish and I am Muslim, but I don't know how to guide her. I want to guide her to the right path." And Rasulullah replied saying, you know, you should, what did you used to do for your mother? He goes, I know, let's just say in contemporary terms, I did the hoovering, I washed the dishes, I, you know, cleaned the house. He said, what you did now, do that twice as much or 3 times harder. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, now that you're following Islam, it means you should respect your parents even more, because we show more love to our parents. He went back. This is obviously like a, you know, like a happy Disney story, but you know, in real life it does happen that he went back home and he was cleaning, and his mother was, you know, surprised. Why is he doing so much work? And she asked, why are you doing this? And he said, because my Prophet told me to. And she came towards Islam. Obviously it takes longer than that. Maybe it can take one day, but it takes longer as well.
Just to end off, I'd like to end off with the name of my Lord, who is the Lord of creation, and He is mentioned in prostration. He is the creator of nations, the one and only salvation. For the one who I mentioned shall destroy all starvation. The way and fashion in describing passion, no world rotation, nor any location where this sensation cannot be found. And with that note, I'd like to thank you for watching the program. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.